Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen arrives in China as Washington and Beijing seek to smooth economic tensions. Chinese Premier Li Qiang says China will take measures to support growth and employment as well as to prevent risks. And all eyes are on Shanghai as industry leaders and tech experts gather for the World Artificial Intelligence Conference in the city. From CGTN headquarters in Beijing, this is Global Business. I'm Michelle Vandenberg. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen arrived in Beijing today, kicking off a 4-day visit. Yellen's trip will be her first to China as U.S. Treasury Secretary. Her arrival comes days after China imposed restrictions on exporting metals crucial to key technology industries. This is the latest escalation in a trade war that ramped up last year with U.S. export controls on semiconductors and chip-making equipment. Her trip also follows that of State Secretary Antony Blinken last month. Yellen has hoped to visit the Chinese capital in search for common ground and to open communication channels amid tensions between the world's two biggest economies. Our reporter Dong Xue joined us earlier and has this to say about Yellen's visit.
On the agenda of Yellen's talks with the Chinese officials in Beijing is the issues of responsibly managing the U.S.-China relationship and working together to address global challenges with a view to find ways the two countries can work together. And ahead of her trip to Beijing, Yellen met with the China's ambassador to the U.S., Xie Feng, in Washington, where the two officials held a frank and productive discussions, and that's according to the official readouts. Well, analysts here in Beijing said no major breakthroughs are expected for the Beijing trip, as China and the U.S. maintain very different positions on technology, trade, and currency. Well, for example, the U.S. had placed significant limitations on advanced semiconductors and chip-making machinery that can be sent to China, which obviously hampered the industry's development here in China. And earlier, I also spoke to a renowned Chinese foreign policy expert who said the Biden administration has already clearly altered the purpose of its containment policy against China. He goes on and said the U.S. is determined to at least maintain the technological gap with China, so in that way it can maintain America's dominance of the world politics. But still, Janet Yellen is seen by some as a voice of reason in Biden's administration, and it's hoped her trip to Beijing could further open up communications between China and the United States.
The American business community has welcomed the visit by Secretary Yellen to China, citing it as a positive indicator for trade. Michael Hart, the president of the American Chamber of Commerce in China, shared in an interview with Zhang Chunyin his perspective on the key role that the Chinese market plays for the U.S. despite the current tensions between the two nations.
Hello, President Michael. It's great to have you with us. Let's start with Janet Yellen's visit to China, which is underway right now. We know that Yellen is always seen as a rational U.S. official with a less hawkish view on China. Earlier, she has called for a healthy economic relations between the two sides, adding that a decoupling from China would be a disaster for both economies. So, first of all, what's your take on her remarks?
So first of all, the United States and China have one of the largest trade relationships in the world. So it's obviously important, and it's important for it to be stable. One of the things AmCham China has been saying, it is important for US and China to have people-to-people exchanges at government level, at a business level, and at a student level. So we're very happy that she's coming. And we do think that she's a very good representative of the US government and a positive outlook on trade.
And just ahead of Yellen's visit, China announced an export ban against U.S. companies on some rare metals used in the production of semiconductors, which is seen as one of the countermeasures against U.S.'s technology restrictions against China. So how do you expect will this action and the increasing China-U.S. tensions hurt the U.S. businesses in China?
High tech is a relatively small but very important part of that two-way trade. Over the years there have been tensions. Over the years there have been sanctions and measures taken by both sides. So, I don't think that one specific recent measure is going to upset the balance, but it will mean some companies have to adjust. But U.S. companies in China need to make sure they abide by U.S. law and by Chinese law, and so we'll have to study to see exactly how these new rules will impact U.S. companies.
And amid the potential prospect of so-called decoupling from China, there are also concerns that the multinationals are moving their supply chain out of China. What do you make of China's role in the overall global supply chain?
So I think it's natural for companies and countries to make sure they have a diverse and well-balanced supply chain. So over the decades, China has built itself up as a major manufacturing and sourcing location. China will continue to be an important part of U.S. companies and European company supply chains for decades to come.
China's always been stressing its interest in FDI and its commitment, its strong commitment in further opening up. From your point of view, what are some of the opportunities could that create for U.S. companies?
We do believe China will continue to be an important place for U.S. companies to invest. So there are plenty of areas where China is a leading sector. So for example, electronic vehicles. China's consumer market is very attractive. Aviation sector is very attractive. So a number of our member companies are very interested to continue to engage with China to see what China can do from a consumer point of view, but also China will continue to be important in terms of manufacturing and supply chain. So a whole host of our companies are very interested in continuing to do business here. And we need to manage the relationship. So U.S. companies have said over the past 3 years, their number one pain point was U.S.-China relations. So if we can make U.S.-China relations better, we can probably expect more FDI from U.S. companies.
And now let's get back to Janet Yellen's visit to China. Do you expect their visit to produce any tangible results when it comes to improving the bilateral economic ties?
The business community is pleased to see Secretary Yellen here. We're pleased to see the U.S. and Chinese government officials talking. So I do think that that in itself is positive. In terms of what she's hoping to achieve, we'll have to see how she frames that. I know she's got plenty on her agenda.
Now, for more discussions on Sino-U.S. economic ties and Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen's visit to China, we're joined by John Gong, Vice President of Research and Strategy at the University of International Business and Economics in Israel. John, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to our studio. Finally,
it's a pleasure to be
back
here
in the studio again. So first, you know, there's Antony Blinken's visit and then now Janet Yellen. What do these visits mean? Are we seeing, you know, more dialogue and more willingness from the U.S. to improve bilateral relations?
I think the Biden administration started to realize that a situation where there's no communications between the two most important governments, the two most important countries in the world right now, is not very healthy, and it's also quite risky. So I think it's a good thing that Washington started to rethink about this issue about dialogue between the two governments, and I think Antony Blinken's visit to Beijing is the first step in that direction, and now it's followed up by Janet Yellen. These are very important cabinet positions held in the Biden administration. I think it's at least a very good sign that the two governments are start talking. And I think in addition to this, in the area of economic and business, I think even though the United States has a policy of confrontation and competition and cooperation, but I think on economic and business areas, at least there's a room for a lot of cooperation. So that's why I think she's coming, and I think the overall, the Chinese society as well as the American business community in China generally hold a very welcoming attitude towards her visit.
Yeah, more communications is always good, right?
Right.
And also, in terms of the significance of China-U.S. relations to the global economic recovery and the results that potentially can be yielded from her visit, what's your take on these?
Well, now we had this precedent in 2008 and 2009 during the subprime mortgage crisis, if you still remember that. There's actually immense policy coordination between Washington and Beijing in terms of macroeconomic policies to jumpstart the global economy. It's naturally desired that something can also happen today, in which we also face economic headwinds right now, both in China as well as in the United States. I certainly hope that something similar can happen. But to be honest with you, I'm moderately optimistic, but I'm not, really having a lot of hope for that. And I think today's situation is very different from 2008, 2009, and given the political climate in Washington right now vis-a-vis China, it's very difficult for Washington for the Biden administration to do something. I think the Biden administration doesn't want to be perceived as being weak on China. That's the problem. So I think there's a very limited space where Janet Yellen can play a role in this area.
Yeah, unfortunately. And also the U.S. has emphasized that security is paramount in U.S.-China economic relations. How do you make of that statement?
Well, this issue about national security, in my view, is grossly being abused by Washington. Today's national security concept encompasses so many things that's going well beyond the original definition of national security as portrayed, for example, in Article 21 in the General Tariff Agreements in WTO. It has already gone way beyond that. But I think the statement made by Janet Yellen before coming to Beijing needs to be noted. He said that what Washington is doing, including these sanctions against Chinese companies, is really out of the issue from perspective of national security, as opposed to trying to maintain an economic and technological supremacy of the United States against China. And that statement is very welcome in my view. But I think this opinion, this argument, is not going to be well received within the national security circle within the Biden administration. People like Jake Sullivan, people like Antony Blinken certainly don't hold that view. So I think her voice may be noted, but not going to be decisive in the policy making in Biden administration.
Very interesting. Great insights.
Thank
you
you
so much for coming to the studio for us. Always great to have you. John Gong, Vice President of Research and Strategy at the University of International Business and Economics in Israel. Now moving on to some business headlines from the U.S. Private sector employment increased by 497,000 jobs in June, and annual pay was up 6.4% year over year, according to the ADP Research Institute in collaboration with the Stanford Digital Economy Lab. Services sectors like leisure and hospitality showed strong gains, while manufacturing, information, and finance showed declines. The number of Americans filing new claims for unemployment benefits increased moderately last week, pointing to only a gradual easing in labor market conditions. Initial claims for state unemployment benefits rose 12,000 to a seasonally adjusted 248,000 for the week ended July 1st, the Labor Department said on Thursday. The U.S. trade deficit in May came in at $69 billion versus April's $74.4 billion. You're watching Global Business, still to come. Chinese Premier Li Qiang says China will take measures to support growth and employment, as well as to prevent risks.
From the 1,035-kilometer railway linking China to Laos, facilitating connectivity and boosting economic growth in the landlocked Southeast Asian country, to the joint China-Saudi Arabia photovoltaic project to harness renewable energy in the oil-dependent kingdom. The Belt and Road Initiative has come a long way since it was first proposed in 2013, complementing the development strategies of partner countries and building on their existing strength.
开创合作共赢的新模式。
The Belt and Road Initiative, linking the world in the pursuit of common prosperity for humanity.
China will take measures to support growth and employment, as well as to prevent risks, Chinese Premier Li Qiang said while presiding over a symposium on the economic situation on Thursday. Li said that despite the complicated world economic situation, China's economy has been steadily improving this year. Promoting high-quality development remains one of the government's top priorities. The country will establish normalized communication mechanisms between the government, foreign, and private companies. China's Ministry of Commerce has briefed media on the recently announced export controls on two metals used in the semiconductor industry in a news conference in Beijing on Thursday. The restrictions on gallium and germanium will be introduced from August the 1st. The spokesperson for the ministry says both have military and civilian uses, and the controls are in line with international practice. Other topics covered at the news conference include household consumption, economic and commercial cooperation between China and New Zealand, and recent developments in foreign investments.
出口管制不是禁止出口。
Export controls do not mean prohibiting exports, and those that comply with relative regulations will be permitted. The Chinese government enforcing export controls does not target any particular country. Before the announcement, the Chinese said had made advance notifications through the China-US and China-EU export control dialogue channels.
Representatives from both China and various African countries, including Ethiopia, Tanzania, and South Africa, are discussing the future of scientific and technological cooperation between the country and continent in Wuhan on Thursday. Xia Ruixue reports.
It's the second time the China-Africa Innovation Cooperation and Development Forum has been held in Wuhan, in central China's Hubei province. 20 international projects spanning scientific and technological cooperation have been signed so far, covering fields ranging from modern agriculture, the life sciences and healthcare, to infrastructure, international trade, and university exchanges.
Today, representatives from over 30 African nations have participated in the forum, which stands as one of the largest of its kind. Our goal is to establish more extensive cooperation in the fields of energy, ecology, environment, and food security between China and African countries through this gathering.
Located in central China, Hubei is gifted with rich talent and potential for continued innovation. The province has made significant progress in becoming central China's innovation hub. On Thursday, an exhibition showcased the latest technological developments and achievements among Hubei and African countries. The event highlighted progress in science, technology, development of talent, industrial exchange, and international collaboration.
We are going into a real deal. It's not about just hearing or signing. It will be an issue of putting the things we have agreed into action.
Yeah, I expect to do work, China and Africa to work in collaboration in terms of technology, in terms of agricultural technology. So I expect this.
At the opening ceremony, the 2023 China-Africa Youth Innovation and Entrepreneurship Competition was also announced, and is aimed at promoting and expanding innovation and entrepreneurship among Chinese and African youth, as well as boosting economic cooperation and cultural exchanges. We've seen cooperations between China and African countries in education bearing fruits in the past 10 years. Many people attending the forum said they're keen to explore potential opportunities in scientific and technological innovation. Xia Ruixue, CGTN, Wuhan, Hubei Province.
Now to some other business headlines from China. Data from the Commerce Ministry shows China's foreign trade and services amounted to 2.6 trillion yuan, or about $359 billion in the first 5 months this year, up more than 10% from a year ago. Among all sectors, tourism reported a surge of 67% on year thanks to the border reopening. China and Nicaragua have concluded a fourth round of negotiations on a free trade agreement in Nicaragua's capital, Managua. Officials have exchanged views on multiple issues, including trading goods and services, financial services, and business visas. The Purchasing Managers Index for global manufacturing dipped half a percentage point in June to 47.8. The figure remained below the 50 mark for 9 months in a row. Data compiler China Federation of Logistics and Purchasing said manufacturing activity in Asia and Africa was more resilient than in developed Western countries. You're watching Global Business, still to come. All eyes are on Shanghai as industry leaders and tech experts gather for the World Artificial Intelligence Conference in the city.
"360-degree profiles of industry movers and shakers, tech mavericks, and policymakers. We drill down on their success. We ask how they set strategy and how they navigate in an increasingly competitive market. Real talk, real business. Join the conversation. Biz Talk, only on CGTN.
With the theme of intelligent connectivity, generating the future, the 2023 World Artificial Intelligence Conference kicks off in Shanghai. Over 400 companies are showcasing their latest AI products and solutions from July 6th to the 8th. CGTN's Wu Lei brings us more.
There are so many creative AI products and solutions inside this vast exhibition area. One of the highlights is that both domestic and international tech companies are showcasing over 30 what are known as large language generative AI models to the public. Let's try using some of them. With the help of cloud computing, deep learning, and a generative AI model, this Sense Mirage can create pictures on a few keywords. For example, aliens, big eyes in outer space. Here we go. Powered by several large language AI models, this office suit can write an article, summarize the key points, and even make a PowerPoint. Besides generative applications, AI has been applied in more industries like healthcare, education, and manufacturing. This is a simulated smart construction site. The intelligent excavator and the tower crane have been equipped with smart cameras, laser radar, and other environmental sensors. They can work for 24 hours a day and complete dangerous tasks without human involvement.
The large language models may be the foundation. Then on the basis of this large model, we also need more professional models in different sectors. Our AI solutions have been more widely used in transportation, ports, aviation, and other fields.
In order to better foster the sustainable and inclusive application of AI, United Nations Industrial Development Organization also launched a global alliance on AI for industry and manufacturing on World AI Conference.
AI in application is revolutionary. AI will change every step of manufacturing, starting from the design, to the processing, to the marketing, to the supply chain. You name it. So I think the AI alliance will create the platform for also business to learn from each other.
But how to improve the overall computing capacity of AI chips? What about data security and the regulation of AI in key industries? Challenges remain as entrepreneurs, scholars, and decision makers continue their discussions at panels and forums over the three-day event. Wu Lei, CGTN, Shanghai.
Let's now explore the remarkable achievements of AI industries in various economic sectors. According to the China's Academy of Information and Communications Technology, the global artificial intelligence market revenue reached $450 billion in 2022, reflecting a 17% annual growth. Data from the International Data Cooperation reveals that China's AI market scale is projected to reach nearly $15 billion by 2023, constituting approximately 1/10 of the global market. By 2026, this figure is expected to surpass $26 billion. Additionally, IDC predicts that AI software spending will account for around 30% of the total market, reaching nearly $8 billion by 2026. The gaming industry has benefited from cutting-edge technology, including advanced motion tracking, virtual reality, and augmented reality. But many believe artificial intelligence has the potential to bring about even greater change in how games are played and developed. Mark New has the details.
It may look like I'm aimlessly staring at a wall, but inside my augmented reality headsets, I'm meeting an owl.
I haven't seen you around here before. Welcome to the Redwood Forest. My name is Wall, and I'm a northern sawwood owl who has lived here my whole life. May I ask what your name is?
My name is Mark.
Nice to meet you, Mark. I don't meet a lot of humans, but I do listen in on their conversations sometimes.
The gaming company Niantic has teamed up with Liquid City to use generative AI to form Wall's personality. Wise guy?
I've been called many things, but that's a new one. I prefer the term quick-witted or eccentric. But hey, if the shoe fits.
You get to actually direct the conversation, and Wall is more like a partner. I guess we're really interested in this possibility for a future where it's not just Wall, but there are many AI agents that could be everywhere, and they could be your partners in learning and playing and doing many different things.
Allowing a user to fill a game with lifelike characters is the goal of in-world AI.
That's a very human interpretation of the idea.
You literally just write who this person is. You can talk about core motivations they have. If you want, you can add flaws and insecurities.
In-World AI's partnerships manager shows me how I can type in my characters' interests and hobbies and then fine-tune their personality.
So these characters have emotions, they have personalities, memories, and backgrounds that you can give to them. But this is going to influence the way they speak to you, the words they choose, the inflection of their voice.
And what can artificial intelligence do for game generation? Well, I'm here with the game Oxworld, where the idea is to dream up a scenario. So let me input this. How about, let me dream ocean with cars as sea life. In seconds, AI generates my game.
Yeah, there is the ocean.
In private testing right now, Oxworld is a multiplayer online game that is ever-changing.
It will try to understand your intention. So the intent engine basically tries to create a new formula out of your thoughts.
The more times a similar idea is entered, the smarter the AI engine gets at understanding and building a game.
The initial development of a video game informs what its future is. So we've broken that down and we've said, no, people's understanding of what they like should be aligned with the understanding of what the game is offering and how the game is designed. Now, this requires breaking the entire sort of game development system.
When asked whether game designers should be worried about AI taking their jobs, Kusha said no. He believes it's the human component that still sparks the creativity that AI can more quickly generate for more players around the world. Mark New, CGTN, San Francisco.
And that will do it for this edition of Global Business here on CGTN. I'm Michelle Vandenberg in Beijing. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.